What's up?
Oh, hey, Grant. I don't suppose you got about 30 minutes to talk about cars.
If I'm being completely honest, probably got days.
Let me guess. Brake job?
You guessed it.
Classic breakdown.
Well, so as Ryan so eloquently put it after last episode, the Transformers were having good evening. Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we've got we think a fun topic. But before we dive straight into it, we'll just do the introduction. So I'm Grant Tommy. I'm Straight Six Fan, found on YouTube, and I am only half the operation here on The Breakdown, part of the Get Out and Drive podcast. That means this guy over this direction. I did it backwards.
There you go. Oh, you screwed it up. That means I'm Jason. I am Old Car Guy, and I am not only half of The Breakdown, this live stream that you're watching, I'm also half of the Get Out and Drive podcast, fueled by AMD, which is where you can find all of these great podcasts right here on this YouTube channel that we put out on a regular basis. If you haven't seen our last episode, you got to go back and you got to watch it. You got to listen to it because it was phenomenal. Talking about how people get screwed over at car auctions, and that one was Meekum. Oh, I didn't want to say that. Nevertheless, we've got some people here in the chat. Get Out and Drive. I am assuming that is John. Could be Joanne. Might even be Paul. But we've also got Paul from Buckrat Cycles. Welcome to the chat. Yeah, we've got a great episode. We've also got Ryan backstage, who is going to be looking after our graphics tonight as well, in case you guys missed out on that. Great topic, Grant. This is Grant's idea, by the way, tonight. So if it's a flop, he gets all the credit.
Yeah.
Grant, tell us a little bit about what we're talking about tonight here on The Breakdown, and kind of your brain activity going into this. And what did you think of talking about it?
Well, first off, you need to know that the attached neighbors to my townhome, they like the wacky tobacco. So when you talk about what was going on in my brain, may have been affected by my neighbors. So I don't know. No, but if you've been following me year long on my channel on YouTube, Straight Six Fan, one of my objectives was not only to do just one full length episode a month for the most part up until August. It's when it fell apart. I was trying to do one short a week, and my cheap way of making sure I had content to do that was I was going back. I have a stack full of year 2000 Carcraft magazines. So in the month of August, their cover story is big blocks for every budget. And so what I was going to do for my short is actually over my shoulder here. So on my whiteboard, I was they had done a rebuild of it's funny too, 25 years later, it was a Steve Dulcich article in Carcraft magazine, but he's building a 440 Mopar. And so they have itemized the list of what it takes to do it. And I was just going to go through that same list and itemize it and see what in $2025 that would be. So, and as I was tabulating it up, it's not done because I really need to call a machine shop to get some rates on what it takes to bore and hone a block. Right. So anyway, it just got me wondering. I was like, are big blocks dead? Because the price adjusted from inflation from 2000. So this 440 build, the 450 horsepower came in at $2,800, basically $2,900. The price adjusted 2025 figure for that is $5,400, $5,425. And I was like, man, if you're going to drop $5,425 on an engine and you're going to swap it in, and your goal is to make $450, it just kind of dawned on me. It's like, man, are big blocks dead? Why would you it seems like there's more efficient, easier ways to get to 450 horsepower in 2025 for about $5,500. So that's where that spawned from. So I guess I asked the question, what are your thoughts, Jason? Do you think in the modern day, are big blocks dead? Are enough people really messing around with big blocks anymore?
Well, before I answer that, I want to go back and talk a little bit about things that was done and maybe are still being done back in the day, let's go back 25 years ago, back to 2000, when if you had a classic muscle car or an older vehicle, an old truck, and you wanted to gain some horsepower, you went to the junkyards and you looked for the old motorhomes. Motorhomes had, a majority of the time, big blocks. They either had 383 or 440 Mopars. They had 454 Chevys. Fords, they had 460s or whatever the 390? So they had those big blocks that you just went in, scooped them up. They were cammed up for torque. So when you took that out, dropped it into a pickup truck, a muscle car, a full-size car, whatever it was, you'd have a tire burner. And it was cheap because nobody, and I mean nobody, was dumb enough to go and tear out an engine out of a motorhome because it's a pain in the butt. There's a lot to get to underneath that chassis. But nevertheless, you did it. It was cheap horsepower. But that's one of the things you did. You took the big blocks. Can you go and get equivalent power out of a small block? To some degree, you could, depending on the car. The problem was small blocks were in everything, but if it was a factory small block, it was a dog. So you had to send this away. Like you said, spend a couple of grand at the machine shop just to come back and gain 50 or 60 or 70 horsepower when you can go to the junkyard and buy the big block. Fast forward 25 years, 2025. Is anybody going to the junkyard looking for big blocks to pop into their project cars anymore? I don't believe so. So to answer the question, do I think the big block is dead? Yes, I do believe that, because I think John mentioned it earlier in the chat that junkyard LS is way cheaper. You can go to the junkyard, pick one of these up for a few $100, grab the wiring harness, grab the transmission if you want. You might have $1,000 tied up into everything. You make it work with a few modifications to your engine bay. Bada bing, bada boom. You've got 365 horsepower right out of the gate in a stock 5.3 LS. So why would you go and jump through hoops in a moldy old motorhome to grab a 440 through all that work when you can go to the junkyard and grab an LS, which was put in absolutely everything GM made over the last 25 years, 30 years. So are they dead? I think so. What are your thoughts, Grant? How do you feel about the big block thinking?
I would tend to agree. I mean, it's partially a byproduct. I think your exhibit about the motorhome big block, which ironically, Dulcich and Freiberg talked about it all the time on their Roadkill Garage episodes. But this one in this article was not a motorhome 440. It was actually out of a 69. It was out of an actual horsepower making era. Or I take that back. The pistons they had from, it's Dulcich. So he had, I got some 69 440 pistons laying around. Yeah. So, well, that's a big difference to the budget list, right? So just how many big blocks are even laying in junkyards anymore anyway, right? So not that many. So it's sort of supply and demand. So the plethora, as you mentioned, Jason, they threw a 5.3 or 4.8 or 6.0 in many things. So you're going to be more likely to find one of those and harvest one of those. I do think that the big block is essentially dead. And again, if that benchmark was 450 horsepower, and again, for $5,500, the 2JZ that we put in the thumbnail, maybe they've priced themselves out of that range by now because people caught on to that, but the power potential is just, I think any of the ones we actually put on the thumbnail, the 6BT Cummins, 5.3 LS for the lack of a better term, 2JZ, I think all of those have way more than 450 horsepower potential. So do big blocks, but it's just man, why would you spend $5,500 on especially with all the fabrication that might be involved? Any of these engine swaps will involve fabrication, but just the physical size of a big block. So I had tasked Ryan with her. I gave him the warning before this episode, so that he doesn't really know the task I'm about to launch at him. But I was just and Ryan, you go ahead and throw one into the bucket here. But just think of if we just went around the horn real quick of just first big time YouTuber, automotive YouTuber that comes to mind, just throw a name out. So Jason, we'll start with you. Just what big channel, YouTube channel?
Oh, shoot. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say Cletus McFarlane.
Ryan, another big time YouTuber.
Derek of Vice Grip Garage.
All right, and then I will take Dylan McCool. So if you went to each of their channels right now and just looked at whatever their active project build is, like, I would be surprised if any of them include throwing a big block. Like, I would find it hard to believe that Cletus's most recent build has anything to do with a big block. And anyway, so a little social experiment. So Ryan, if you would maybe go to any of those three channels, and I mean, I don't follow any of these guys enough to really know what their active project car is right now, but I just so in the chat, if anybody knows, as Ryan pulls up whatever the first one that comes up.
As we wait for Ryan to do that, we got Paul Meyer. He is our production assistant producer guy over at the Get Out and Drive podcast. He's into the chat. The big thing, I guess, that we really kind of need to differentiate that we may or may not be able to determine or devise here tonight is what is a big block. That was a question that Ryan had brought up to us earlier before we went live, and neither one of us really had the idea of thinking about what that definition is. It certainly isn't cubic inches, because we go back into the 50s, and when Chrysler was coming out with these big V8s, they were like 280 something cubic inch, and they were huge honking engines. One of the most popular ones was a 318 Big Red wide block. They were huge engines, and yet a 318 modern engine, like I'm losing my mind. I think they're an RB series from the 70s on up. Like, they were small block engines. Cletus McFarlane ran 427s, but they were LS based engines. So they were, as far as I'm concerned, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I believe those are still classified as a small block. Mopar has been running Hemis for the last 25-ish years. And those, again, they're small blocks no matter the size, whether they were the 5.7, the 6.1, 6.2, 4s, whatever they had. They were 396, I think, was one of them that they had for a while, and they were still based on the same small block that they always had in the Hemi. But Ryan, what are you coming up with there for some?
So they just went on Vice Grip's YouTube channel in the last, at least going back 2 months. The closest thing I can find is a 406 with a big supercharger bolted onto it. That seems to be the biggest thing that he was working on. Everything is 350 or, smaller.
Or any like modern fuel injected versions.
Yeah, Duramax. Duramax. He's got a couple of LSs. There's a new Hemi. He's got he's giving away, I think it is, or no, he's pulling the Hemi out of a car to put in a jet boat. So yeah, actually, I think the jet boat might have a big block in it, if I remember this video from 2 weeks ago, but I don't think it works. So.
And King Eric, the greatest of all, is in the chat. Welcome, Eric. He mentioned Nick's Garage works on big blocks all the time. So, yes, he does. But one of the things that Nick is famous for is building these engines almost to factory spec. And maybe he's building them a little more stout, but they're going back into the car they came out of in a lot of cases. So it's not really engine swap per se. He's building a lot of engines, dyno tuning a lot of engines. But yes, he's an exception because he's a Mopar guy, and that's a lot of what he does. But we're talking swaps.
Well, we don't necessarily even have to talk swaps specifically, but like you bring up a good point. That's still a small fraction of the hobby as a whole, right? Because as you mentioned, Jason, like these guys specific, it's numbers matching Mopar guys is like, no, I want my Roadrunner to have the 440 6-pack that it came with, like because that's what made that actual car was the 6-pack, So it's I don't know. Like I said, it all just spawned off of an exercise that I thought was going to make a great short, and then I realized how much work was involved. But to pull it off, and it's like, oh, I think this is a pretty good conversation to have, and I'm just kind of curious and I'll be curious to monitor the comments after this show, like as gearheads stumble upon this and weigh in, like even if if money wasn't an issue, right? If you could have it your way, I guess I'll pose the question this way to you, Jason, like, if money wasn't the issue, like, is a big block on top of your list of what you would swap into? I mean, Dale Jr., for instance.
No, and I've outweighed that because if you guys know the Suburban behind me is a 1990. They came with two engines, a 350 and a 454. Mine has a 350. If I want to get more power out of that 350, I've got to do everything that Grant has already shown on the back of his whiteboard there. I've got to send it away. I've got to have it bored out. I've got to have it line honed, and I've got to get bigger pistons. I've got to have the crank polished. I've got to have the heads done. I've got to do all of the stuff to get maybe 300 horsepower out of it, 350. If I go aluminum heads, then I got to buy aluminum heads. Maybe I jump 350 up into 400 horsepower on a 350. That's going to cost you guys. I had one done on Dale the truck. Like that engine just at the machine shop, I had $3,000 Canadian tied up into it, and I still had to buy pistons. I still had to pay to have the heads done. Right? I had I had to buy an intake, and when everything was all said and done, I'm not sure I had much more than 300, maybe 325 horse tied up into it, and I still had to pay all that money. When the current project that I have, the engine swap for Dale Jr. here, is a 5.3 LS. I paid $500 for the engine. I got $150 tied up into a shallow oil pan. I've got a sponsorship on an intake for it, which is about a $700 value. And when I still got to buy a camshaft, which again probably $500 to $600. And by the time I get this thing all put back together, I might have $1,800, $2,000 tied up into this engine. That's going to give me maybe a shim over 400 horsepower. So I'm going to double the horsepower of my current throttle body 350, and I'm going to have some fun with it. So it's to go LS in a GM is a smart thing to do, but to some people to LS in a Toyota or a Ford or a Dodge, to some people is blasphemy. But guess what? Power, dollars for power, or power for dollars, LS is the way to go. And I think that's what a lot of people are realizing in this hot rod world nowadays, that you can get so much more bang for your buck in an LS world.
Well, and so another thing Ryan had done a good job of is, like, and you should just talk about, just in the chat too, when you just think of the last engine swap project you saw on Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is, you're more likely to have run into, of course, as Jason mentioned, the LS swap, things like the Coyote swap. I mean, there's, the list kind of goes on and on. Maybe we talked about the 2JZ earlier. That's another common one. When I first got into YouTube, there was an account out there that put a 2JZ in a 66 Mustang. I thought that was weird, but I watched the build, it was cooler and cooler the more I watched it.
The
Gen,
wasn't it?
It was Ramsey Customs.
Okay.
Gary Ramsey. And even the Gen 3 Hemi, like, people are spinning out and wrecking those all over the place. So I don't know that you're buying one of those for $5,500. You might be in it for $7,000 or something, depending on the level. If it's just a simple 5.7 or a 6.2 Scat Pack, or if it's a Hellcat, on and on and on. But plenty of people reckon Dodges out there. But even like Boosted Boy Kyle, right? He's always about the Honda K series is his big swap. So, I mean, there's just I think it's more fun just to see more creative things these days. Like there's a guy out there who coyote swapped a square body Chevy, and I love that because it's usually reversed. So it's great to just have one of those out there. But I know I missed some. Even Ryan, I know I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up. Oh yeah, a V10 and then a Subaru, but even TDI swaps are like, especially in the off-road world, is a huge go-to. Like, I'm gonna go crawling over rocks. I just need torque. I don't need all the Hurspers, but a TDI, Jason, and once upon a time we interviewed Dirt Lifestyle Nate. He had that TDI swapped. I think it's a TJ, but I'm sure I missed one, but I'm just curious again, Jason, your reaction to all these unique swaps we see these days. And
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of unique swaps, and Ryan would be remiss if he didn't get an EV insult in there somewhere. But this is something that's becoming new in the hot rod world as well. Despite how you feel about EV anything, you can't not talk about the torque and the horsepower related to what you're seeing on the screen there. So there's a lot of guys doing that in their hot rods nowadays, just to be different. But we also go back and we look at diesel swaps. Yes, Cummins 12, 24 valves are the big diesel swap. But a lot of that is because those are somewhat readily available, but they're freaking pricey. To buy an old clapped out Cummins truck, even if it's just rotten to the ground, they want $6 and $7 grand for these trucks because they think they've got gold under the hood, right? But from what little bit of research that I've done, you can also go, John just said it, you can also go to China and buy a Cummins that's basically built to the similar spec of what the old 5.9 first gen and the old 12 valves. But if you do your research too, and you want to find a good horsepower rated 6-cylinder diesel, don't forget about the Mercedes brand. They put diesels back in we're going back to the 70s, late 70s and 80s. They were doing diesels. And by the time they got into the late 90s and early 2000s, they were running 6-cylinder 3-liter diesels that were classified as the 2JZ of diesels. On the stock internals, you could crank those suckers up, crank the fuel up, and gain about 500 to 600 horsepower before you really start breaking stuff. So there's a lot of things that I've been wanting to get a hold of one of those engines, by the way. And if I could have found one, I may have put one into Dale Jr. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for a little bit of horsepower for not a lot of money, LS is the way to go. I don't think big block is the ticket anymore. I don't think that they're as readily available. All those old 70s and 80s motorhomes are becoming a thing of the past. In fact, junkyards don't want them. They're too much of a hassle to destroy and get rid of, and they don't stick around very long. So we want to go right back to the very beginning of this episode and answer that question: is big block, or are big blocks dead? I think we all can agree here tonight that yes, they are. And where do we go from there? Well, we look at whatever else is out there and readily available.
Well, and I think to go full circle with the idea of the RV big block swap, I regret that I can't think of his name at the moment, but just kind of left the old TNN, Spike TV, Power Block Nation, all that
Tommy
stuff.
Boschers?
Sorry, say the name again.
Tommy Boschers?
Yeah. He's Hellcat swapping in old Winnebago. So, like, if that isn't evidence enough, like, it probably came with a big block, and he's pulling it out to put a Hellcat in. And again, it's a slippery slope when we start to talk budget on top of horsepower. But I just think 450 horsepower used to be this like crowning achievement 25 years ago, but now it's like, I mean, the old phrase, there's no replacement for displacement. Well, I actually think there has been. Turbo LSs are getting you north of $450 with, hardly any effort. So,
yeah. Eric is saying that I need a diesel out of an 84 Oldsmobile. No, I do not.
Yeah, 350
Uh,
diesel, yeah.
And I'll tell you why I don't, because I saw that episode of Junkyard Digs. I'm not inclined. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah.
even in the world of diesel swaps, sorry, Jason, you were going to go somewhere, I think.
No, I was just going to agree with you by saying that, you know, we talk about the old adage that there's no replacement for displacement, and turbos has become that replacement. Turbos, superchargers, prochargers on some of these modern engines, whether it be a Coyote or LS, even Hemis. I know that they're starting to do a lot of supercharger, procharger on Hemis, that you're taking something that was pretty okay to begin with, adding an extra 175 to 100 horsepower into them, and you're having some fun. The problem with that, though, is that it's all cost associated, meaning you want a turbo. Well, there's a big cost to turbo something, even if it is a Chinese whistle, war whistle, whatever they want to call them, right? Like, by the time you buy that, get all your piping, get your blow-off valves and your tuning done, you could be into it for a couple $1,000 over and above what you've paid to have your engine done. You get into these Hemis and LSs and whatever Coyotes and put your pro chargers. Well, they say pro chargers are pretty much bolt on, and they are, but they still require a tune. And you're not going to find a pro charger for anything for less than probably $4,000. So you want horsepower, you got to pay for it, no matter how you're looking at it.
Now, I will say, if we had to like really drill down into it and say, well, when did the big block officially die? And I think if you go back to 25 years to CarCraft magazine, okay, John says 2009. I think I could probably work up to that. That sounds about right. 2000 may have been right around the start, closer to the start of it. But, you know, for a while, Chevy was offering that 502 crate motor, and then they had the 572, I think, a little bit later. But there was an era in there where the 502 was like the thing. Like, people were doing the SEMA builds, and they were throwing a 502 in it. I would think, if I had to just guess, that was probably, I mean, I could see that going all the way up to about 2009, that people were still kind of crazy about the 502. And I guess, you know, if we then fast forward to modern day, is the new Godzilla maybe I don't know if it's officially a big block or not. That would be a good thing to know. But if we assume that it is, which it may not, should have done some homework. As Jason mentioned, he like, well, what constitutes a big block? My understanding is that it's basically the amount of like material thickness, but distance between cylinder walls. So, and as you add that, of course, around 4 sides, I mean, you know, when you pop the hood, you can just look at the physical size of a head on a small block versus a big block and just know that's a big block. Like, I mean, they are significantly larger. So that's my oversimplification. John, maybe you could bail us out with a better explanation, because you seem to be a little more in the know. But
well, it's because he's so much older than most of us. But if it's as we wind this episode down, talking about big blocks, if you guys know in your mind, or you know as a matter of fact what constitutes a big block, leave it down in the comment section down below. We're going to go back and we're going to review this after a couple of days to see what some of your answers are. It'll be interesting to see what people's take is on what was classified as a big block or not. Was it piston size? Was it bore depth? Was it crank? Was it material? What constituted a big block? We want to know your guys' answers in the comment section down below. And if you want to see some big block action, if you guys are following me, Old Car Guy, on Instagram, you'll see I made a story earlier this evening about a certain engine that is coming to the channel, that we picked up a vehicle that I'm not so proud of. Even John told me not to buy it. And I also spoke to another friend of mine who is a big Ford guy who simply told me not to buy this. And I bought it. It's got a 429 big block, rated at 360 horsepower stock. So if you guys want to see a little bit more of that action, make sure you follow me on Old Car Guy, not just on YouTube, but Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all over the place. We're going to be posting stories about that. But yeah, I think this was a great discussion to lead into that, but kind of check off a little bit of our knowledge and see what we feel big blocks were, what they did for the hobby, their cost associated with their power. And I think we broke down a lot of things. Grant, is there something that we missed that we probably should continue to talk about before we end this episode?
No, I mean, I think we covered it. I'm gonna be excited to see what the discussion is in the comments below after this post for eternity, if you will.
Hey, Drew Hobbins made it into the comments. Hey, Drew.
I know. I'm sure there's some dedicated big block builders out there, so it'd be great to hear from you in the why behind you continue to go down that route. But I guess if there's one more thing I wanted to cover, just being the resident Ford guy, I just kind of want to make fun of like the 460 while it in the race to always have just a little more than the next guy. Ford kind of got there at the 460, but really historically, how many 460 builds did you ever read about in magazine? Like, what I mean? Like, it's just like cool, you did it, but like I don't know. I don't know that I could think of one off the top of my head. Like, oh man, that killer 460 build.
Yeah,
it never really took. So, just wanted to kind of poke fun at the blue oval. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was a great topic of discussion. Also, if you guys want to see certain topics of discussion on these episodes of the breakdown, you can head on over to getoutanddrive.com, and down at the very bottom of that page, there's a listener hotline. You can record a message, tell us what you want to hear, see if there's a subject in there that we want to talk about. And if we use that in a topic, we'll make sure that we tag you guys. But that's one way to do it. The other way is to follow us on social media at Old Car Guy. Over this way at Straight Six Fan, as you can see on his screen. And also make sure you're subscribed right here to the Get Out and Drive podcast. That way you get notified every time we upload a new video, a new podcast, or when we go live. Grant, I'm done talking for tonight. Thank you guys very much for being in the chat. I think it was a great conversation, great topic to discuss. I had a lot of fun with it, and I will let you close us out tonight.
Well, I feel a little guilty because I feel like I did it last month, but hey, someone's got to clean up the mess around here. So I guess that's me again. I did have a job as a janitor in college, so maybe I'm well prepared. But no, again, great discussion, and I just want to echo what Jason said. By all means, if there's a topic that you guys, oh man, that'd be great, send it our way. We'd love to. Honestly, we'd love to have a viewer's choice episode, and we could even, like, if we had a ton of them, we could bundle them and kind of do like real quick hits on it. So, but thanks for tuning in. Anybody who has stumbled upon us, even watching the replay, just wanted to say, not only to Jason's fans and Ryan's fans and Paul's and John's and Joanne's, but to all my Six fans out there, thanks for watching. What's up?
Oh, hey, Grant. I don't suppose you got about 30 minutes to talk about cars.
If I'm being completely honest, probably got days.
Let me guess. Brake job?
You guessed it.
Classic breakdown.